Hello, I'm Holly Tanner with the Herman Wallace Pelvic Rehab Institute, and I'm here with Mora Pluchino, who has many roles at the Institute. And we wanted to talk today about the pathway of being a teaching assistant and what that looks like, and then also becoming a lead teaching assistant or even being an instructor. So, Mora, thank you for taking time to talk to me. And if you could introduce yourself and share a little bit about your background, that'd be wonderful.
Thanks for having me. I have been a physical therapist for 13 years and I have worked for the same outpatient hospital based physical therapy place. And then about 2 years ago, I started my own consulting business to see patients and kind of meet their needs outside of the hospital based outpatient facility. And then I'm a mom, I'm a wife of 12 years, I am a foster kitten person. We have a golden retriever who's our baby. And then I TA for Herman and Wallace. I've written actually two pelvic health books, little mini books on Amazon. And I kind of just love pelvic floor things. So, and I actually, before I was a pelvic floor therapist, I was a pediatric therapist. So I did that for about 7 years and then transitioned into pelvic health and pediatrics
Mhm. Well, and
now.
how did you get into becoming a teaching assistant for Herman and Wallace?
So actually, the first time I TA'd a class, my pelvic floor bestie, who I met on the first day of pelvic floor one, had convinced me that it was time for us to start teaching assisting. And so we had teaching assisted a class, I think it was March 7th and 8th of 2020. So it was the weekend before COVID started.
Right.
And we teaching assisted that weekend. And we were kind of all like joking about COVID and it's going to be okay. And it'll be the 2 weeks and this whole thing. And it was really wonderful. It was an experience we had like, I don't know, it was the way the classes used to be formatted. So it was like 50 people, two instructors. I think there was like six TAs. It was like a really big open environment. It was, really awesome, but it was a little overwhelming. I have a lot of sensory things, and I was like, this is a little overwhelming for me. This is a lot of people at once. But it was really awesome, and I loved it. And then my world kind of shut down. So then what happened was, there wasn't any courses for a while, and then I think it was an email that one of the faculty members at Herman and Wallace had sent out saying like, "Hey, is anyone interested in doing this?" And it was like a last minute weekend thing. And my husband was like, "We're not going anywhere or doing anything during COVID anyway." So I was like, "Okay, yeah, I'll do it." And I just loved being able to be that like hands on person.
Mhm. And what do you like about being a teaching assistant when you're interacting with folks? Like, what aspects of it that you find stimulating or enjoy?
So I think that the class size is really nice. And a lot of the participants always say this, like, wow, I have taken another course before, and this is such a nice smaller class because most of the class sizes are kind of more intimate and small. And I think it really encourages the teaching assistant to be more hands on and be more part of the teaching process than the old format, just because we are kind of the person in the room to answer questions. So instead of running up and asking the teacher, it's like you're the person to ask, and then if I don't have the answer, then I can go and ask the instructor. They're always readily available, but it's kind of nice to be that person in the room answering the question or, just being the person to kind of guide people on the journey. My favorite class to TA is pelvic floor one because it's where we're like learning about the pelvic floor and that the pelvic floor is warm and that there's muscles down there and,
Mhm.
how to go there. And I think that it's like, I love holding people's hand through that journey. It's so fun for me.
Right. So with these satellites, it ends up being probably closer to what, 8 to 20 people in
Hmm.
in various settings. And they get to ask you all these questions and you're guiding them through the lab experience. Now, because we have had to rely upon teaching assistants so strongly, and we knew that the only way to be successful with this COVID world and the satellite model that we created, in which the instructor is doing a Zoom from a location that is often far from these satellites, we knew that we had to have successful teaching assistants at that site, right? We knew that it couldn't be someone who we didn't know or who hadn't taken certain courses and who didn't have a good reputation as someone who could really handle the pressure of being that person to answer the questions. So we developed the lead teaching assistant role as well, and you became a lead teaching assistant. Can you share a little bit about what that pathway looks like for folks who might be interested and really again stepping up to that next level of being the person in the room who is answering and guiding and taking folks through a lot of their lab experiences?
So being a lead TA is something that's been developing since, March of 2020. And I actually it was really nice because Herman Wallace sent out some of us who were doing more TAing during that time frame. They sent out an email saying like, "What can we do to make this better for you?" So we actually got to kind of like write our own position and be like, "Hey, we want this. Hey, we'd like this. Like, hey, this is what would work." Which is really nice. I don't think you always get that in every other work environment, and so that like made us feel very valuable. But to become a lead TA, you have to have done all of the basic pelvic floor series, which I had done when I started teaching assisting. And then you have to have taken the courses that you're teaching assisting if it's not part of that initial series. You're giving up a weekend of your time to be with other individuals, but you're really on call for answering any problems throughout the class. So you're helping with like technology stuff and making sure everyone can log in and see and hear the instructor. Actually, my husband purchased for Christmas one of these little speakers that I always can have people able to hear because that's always a problem going to some satellites. And then, just being there to, if the student in the class has a question, that I can, use the bat phone channels to kind of get the answer from the instructor when it's appropriate, making sure everyone knows time for coming and going, and then just being hands on for all the labs and, you know, giving that enrichment experience of like my clinical pearls and my clinical experience and being there with them to be like the eyes and the hands that the remote instructor can't be.
And what are the perks then of being a lead teaching assistant?
You get to do all those fun things. Like you get to be a mentor for all different people. You get to, also experience, especially when you start to teach some of the later classes, like other people might have experience in one area more than I do. I don't come from a hugely orthopedic background. So they might teach me something orthopedically where I look at things more from like a neuro or physiological hat. Just meeting a whole bunch of different new people and kind of getting to help them on their journey is super awesome.
Mhm. And how about getting paid?
So people always ask me, how have you taken so many classes? Because I'm working my way through all the Herman and Wallace classes. I'm trying to take them all. But that's part of it is that you can earn credits towards taking further classes. So I tell people if you are, serious in, being a PRPC maybe, or, taking a whole bunch of classes and specializing in certain areas, like maybe the oncology or, pregnancy postpartum, that you can bank your TAing money towards taking future classes with Herman Wallace. So, basically for every class that you TA, you earn a class that you can take. And so that's, instead of me spending a fortune on taking continuing education, I can spend a weekend teaching and then I can pay for a weekend for me to take a class. So that makes it really easy to do. And you kind of also get to relearn the old information because I took pelvic floor one in 2015, I think. And pelvic floor one has changed a lot since 2015. And I've gotten to retake that class probably 5 or 6 times in the past 2 years, which
That's
is a
what thing I
great
was going
benefit too.
right, I was going to ask you, do people say, like, doesn't it get boring to hear the information over and again?
Nope. And like, I am a small business owner. So if it's something that I'm like, oh, urinary incontinence, I've gotten that, or I just TA'd this course 2 weekends ago, I really don't think there's new information for me. I can sit and write content or answer emails or, work on other projects I have. Like if I'm, writing a project or something like that, I have some time for, me to work on organizational things during that time frame.
Sure, so when you are a teaching assistant, certainly during the lab activities, you're
Oh,
running
you're
the show.
yep, yep.
Um, but there's, that little bit of perhaps downtime when you're,
Mhm.
again, letting that information flow to you and jotting down notes if you hear something new, but there's some time that you get to not be in charge of, the whole process.
And then also I'm like a busy working mom that has, a kid and a household. So TAing sometimes is like a fun little break for me where I get to go to
Sure.
like a hotel room and I get to like right now at the format, they don't start class usually till 11:30 or 10:30 my time. So like I get to sleep a little late. I get to have a little breakfast and tea by myself and I can work on some projects and then go to class and do that for a while. And so sometimes it's a nice little learning break that kind of got taken away when you couldn't go to CEUs anymore for COVID.
Right, and then getting to sleep in your own bed and not have to travel
Mhm,
and take Fridays off.
mhm.
There's some silver linings to all the challenges that have
Yeah,
been posed to the
and I
way we
mean,
offer.
someone was saying the other day, like how this model has made it so much more accessible to like young parents because before you couldn't leave your kids home alone, especially if you were like nursing a baby or something. That parent couldn't be that far from home. Whereas now, you can be in your hometown or you can be somewhere that's near a shore house or it's easier to access. I know when I took all of my initial pelvic floor series, I would have to take 4 days off because it was a 3-day class, and then I'd have to travel, and I'd have to hike all the way to Long Island and stay with my aunt, and then we'd have to, like, do, like, a car swap thing so she could go to work and I could go to my course, and it was a very long, thing to get my all those 4 classes in, and this would have been so much easier.
Yes. Well, not only have you been a course participant and now a lead teaching assistant, and by the way, I think you've got some swag nearby, don't you?
I do. So I brought this out because we were trying to remember the title, but this is my little new teaching shirt that showed up in the mail. Um, and it's just, it's really, oh, my little boy there. It's really nice to, give feedback and then have that feedback like turn into, some things. So I was saying how we had a whole TA meeting the other day with all the lead TAs, and the person who's in charge of us was asking like, what can we do better? And we were saying, we miss name tags, and she was like, oh, okay. And she arranged to have name tags and all of the boxes sent to everybody now. And
Mhm.
then in the mail came these little thank yous of little shirts for us all to wear when we're teaching assisting, which was just really wonderful.
And one of the developing perks that we've already started to put in place is educational opportunities. And
Hmm.
so there will be a lot of faculty trainings and guest speakers and things like that. And so, whether or not it's specific to the teaching assistants, there will be access to either be live in those meetings or to be able to watch those educational opportunities on the teaching assistant platform. Can you share a little bit about the teaching assistant platform and how that makes it easier now to figure out where a course is happening, where do they need a TA?
Yeah, so it's a little platform that like so to become a TA, you have to fill out an application and send in your resume. And then once you get approved to do that, once you've done the prerequisites, then you can get access to this little portal location, and it'll have a list, and you can organize the list by date or by location or by time. And so, sometimes I'll be like, you know what, I feel like going to Long Island and visiting my Aunt Terry. So I'll look and see, what weekends might that work for me. And I can kind of just click a box and say, yep, I'll be there. And then you push submit, and then you get a list with all the ones that you've committed to be a lead TA, you have to do 4 per year. And then the other perk of being a lead TA is that you can also opt to either get paid in course credits or get paid in actual money. And that was one of the things we developed because at one point I was like, I have a lot of Herman and Wallace money and I could really use some regular.
Yep.
Um, and then, Herman Wallace also does, if it's a certain radius from your home, they will also put you in a nice hotel for the night if you need to. So you don't have to travel a whole lot, which is also a really nice benefit because you get to sleep in a nice cushy bed and get breakfast. And
Well, and one of the things we recently heard from some lead TAs is that there was some interest in becoming teachers themselves in
Mhm.
writing and presenting a course for the institute. This is something that you have pursued starting a
Mhm.
while back, and now you're going to be teaching in a month.
I am.
A course for Herman Wallace. Can you tell us a little bit about the process, what that looked like? At what point did you think maybe I could do this, or I have this idea and I think it's a really good one that people want to hear about? And then you
So,
became an
yeah,
instructor.
I think you have to teaching assist or work for Herman Wallace for 3 years before you can teach any of the series courses, is my understanding. But I just happened to be having a conversation with my work wife, as I call her, and we were talking about taking an ethics course. And I was saying, it's funny because I really wish there was like a pelvic health ethics course. And you guys are so accessible. I emailed you and said, "Do you guys have one? I don't see one on the website. Like, was there ever one?" And you know, the Herman Wallace was like, "No, there isn't one." And I was like, "Can I write it?" And you guys were like, "Sure, send us an outline." And you know, that was really a pretty nice and easy process. And you guys were great at giving feedback on what would work and what would not work, and some direction for that, and kind of developing it into a possible series, which is super exciting. And yeah, and you're very or everything with Herman Wallace. The reason I love Herman Wallace is everything is very organized. You always know where you're supposed to be, what you're supposed to do. You're getting a reminder email at this and this time. Everything's in its box, and it's you know where you're supposed to be. And the same thing with teaching a class. It was like you need this done by this date, you need this done by this date, you need this in this format. There was PowerPoints on how to do it. Very easy to comply with.
Wonderful.
Mhm.
Well, Maura, also, you've been starting to help with curriculum work as well. So I think
Mhm.
it's just really exciting to see whether it's writing a blog post or becoming a teaching assistant. writing a class. There's so many different opportunities, and there's so much room for sharing of knowledge with our colleagues. And
Mhm.
it is really stimulating because I think we're all so grateful to each other when we do share knowledge, things that we've worked hard to learn in the clinic. And hopefully, we can make things easier for the next person stepping up into pelvic health roles.
Mhm. Yeah. It's all about like working smarter and not harder and not reinventing the wheel. So that's, a lot of times this is a network where you can say, oh, hey, that already exists. Let me use that and recommend it instead of being like, let me just reinvent the wheel and, write this from scratch.
Terrific.
Mhm.
Well,
Mhm.
and if folks are interested in becoming a teaching assistant or learning about any other roles at the Institute, everything is written out pretty clearly on the website itself. And so folks can check that out. And thanks again for all your contributions to Herman Wallace and for sharing some information about that pathway of becoming a lead teaching assistant.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
You bet.